Good day, everyone, and thank you for joining us at today's session. My name is Yvonne, and I'll be your facilitator today. It's a real pleasure to guide you what promises to be a very inspiring and highly relevant conversation about agility, transformation, and collaboration in one of the world's most complex and critical industries, pharmaceuticals. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on a unique and brave initiative led by Boehringer Ingelheim, and we're going to hear firsthand how transformation unfolded from two exceptional ladies and leaders who are right at the center of the change. Please meet Dr. Andrea Kreisselmeier, Principal Agile Coach at Boehringer Ingelheim, and the lovely Yvonne, also a Principal Agile Coach. Mathias Tölken, COO of Xuviate, will guide us through the journey's mechanics and insight, as Xuviate led the initial bootcamp and supported the agile implementation from its earliest steps. Before we dive in, just a quick note that, yes, there will be a recording and we'll be sending it along with the presentation slides to all attendees who have joined us today after the session. Also, we encourage everyone to make the full use of the Q&A section. Please share your questions there. My colleague Victoria will be managing both the chat and the Q&A throughout the session. Okay, before we dive in, we would love to hear from you today. Please take a moment and answer our very short poll. It should be appearing at your screens. I'm going just to wait a few moments for everyone to answer quickly on the poll, which should appear on your screen right now. The question is, which industry are you coming from today? Okay, once you're ready, we're going to submit the results. Okay, I can see that a lot of people have answered so far. We have many from the pharma. Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to give the mic now to the lovely Yvonne, who is going to start the presentation. Yvonne, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the lovely introduction, Albena. And I would ask Andrea to join our presentation. So thank you. So a very warm welcome from our side to our webinar, Revolutionizing Drug Development at Boehringer Ingelheim, from silo thinking to network approach. Andrea Kreisselmeier and myself will guide you through the next hour. And you heard it from Albena already. Drug development is a very regulated environment, and we focused not on how we can improve what we need to deliver to the authorities, but we had a look on how can we improve the ways how we are working to deliver our results. And it's also not the final stage what we are presenting today. You will hear a lot. This is what we are focusing on. This is what we are working on. And also at the end, we will give you a bit of an outlook. So this was a short introduction. Andrea, if you could move to the next slide, please. We were mentioned already. My name is Yvonne. I'm a principal Agile Coach at Boehringer Ingelheim. I was quite a long time working for a big US company called IBM. In my last positions, I was an Agile coach and also leading an Agile transformation and Europe, Middle East, Africa level. I left IBM at the beginning of 2021 and joined then in Berlin the Federal Ministry of Finance to support with Agile ways of working and in leadership questions, but in the frame of a fellowship program. And I'm now a principal Agile coach at Boehringer Ingelheim since the end of 2021. And Andrea, would you like to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. My name is Andrea Kreisselmeier. I'm with Boehringer Ingelheim now for 12 years. I have a background in a lot of communication and change management, introducing new ways of working, new new ways of or new communication tools. And I'm in the position as principal Agile Coach in the biostatistics and data sciences in Boehringer Ingelheim now for 3.5 years, helping teams to adopt the Agile way of working.
Thank you. You see also our LinkedIn links, so feel free to connect with us via LinkedIn. Also, if you would like to reach us afterwards for some closer connection. Andrea, if you could move to the next slide, please. So what are we talking about in the next hour? We will provide you a short intro to Boehringer Ingelheim. What was our starting point on vision to start our new ways of working? How did we achieve it? What were the outcomes? What did we measure so far? A short summary and outlook. And of course, there will be time for questions and answers. And in between, also Matthias will provide a short summary about his lessons learned from an external perspective. Thank you. Boehringer Ingelheim. You heard already, we are a pharma company. Boehringer Ingelheim is a family-owned business and was founded 1885 in Ingelheim, Germany. Ingelheim is a smaller city west of Frankfurt, 45 to 60 minutes far away from Frankfurt. And we are focusing on human, pharma, and animal health. And today we will talk about our experience that we piloted in the human pharma area. Boehringer has around 54,500 employees worldwide. And if you could go quickly back, Andrea, for a second, thank you. We have R&D expenses of 6.2 billion euro, 26 R&D sites worldwide for human, pharma, and animal health, and a net sales of 26.8 billion euro. And at the right side, you see also our headquarters in Ingelheim, what you also see a little bit behind me, so to get a rough idea. If you move on, Andrea, please. Some numbers were already mentioned, but maybe important to know, these are the key figures from 2024. And in the last year, we reached 66 million of patients and many million animals in addition. If you move on to the next slide, please. We focus on therapeutic areas where there is still a high unmet need of patients. You see here oncology, mental health, cardio-renal, metabolic diseases, immunology, respiratory diseases, and eye health. We are focusing on where we still have a high unmet need, ideally to cure the needs of the patients or to stop diseases or stabilize the current state. This was a quick short intro to Boehringer. And we will move now to our pilot, and I hand over to Andrea to talk about the starting point and the vision.
Thank you, Yvonne. So where did we start and what was our vision? Why did we start at all? Some of you are from Pharma, as we know from the poll that we did at the beginning. But for those who are not familiar with how a drug is developed, that's a very tedious and very complex task to do, which entails a lot of different functions and a lot of different people needing to work together. And this is only a very small part of what needs to be done. We call a new drug substance an asset. So you will hear the asset network, asset team very often. So that always deals with this one compound that we are trying to develop into a drug or a set of drugs. And here you see a couple of teams that are working together, and you see all the interactions that the teams have in order to develop and go through the clinical trials in order to prove efficacy and side effects of the new compound. And it's very hard that in this very complex and a lot of interdependencies that we have a slow flow of information and the communication of priorities. So our vision was, can't we set up a high-performing team of teams who were all work with the same mindset and the same ways of working, because then we would avoid the friction at the edges of the different teams working together. And we had the hypothesis that we can, if we all link the teams together using a good agile approach, that we can communicate changes in priorities from top to bottom very quickly, but also increase the transparency. Where are we with all the different work packages that we need to take care of, also from bottom up, so in a consolidated way, so that the steering teams have a better overview of what is happening. So we engaged with one of our asset leads, and she wanted to onboard onto this endeavor to try Kanban along the entire value chain, from the asset into over evidence and biostatistics and data sciences. These are the different teams that need to work together in order to increase the transparency across the different teams, reduce the time for updating each other, have an easier way to prioritize, identify blockers early, and as a result, take critical decisions as soon as possible, so that we can develop drugs as swift as possible and bring the new medications to our patients. So how did we go about this? And we developed a Kanban solution in a bootcamp setting and continuously improved thereafter. So how does this look? And this is a very busy slide, and I'm sorry for that, but maybe you have a look more on the left-hand side in the middle. So we started with an 8-week boot camp that was led by Xuviate, and we had 5 internal Agile coaches supporting the teams that you saw on the previous slide. We had a preparation phase where we laid the theoretical basis. So most of the teams, or nearly all of the teams, had no knowledge of Kanban when they started. So we needed to lay the theoretical basis, co-develop the boards, and strengthen the interactions of the teams, where a lot of the team members only knew their name, but they have never met before. That was only done in 4 weeks. Then we went directly live with this prototype that we had of the different boards. And then in the following 4 weeks, we tested and adapted what we had. We learned a lot by implementing, putting all the work onto the boards, working with the systems, working with the teams and the interactions, adapted a lot, so that after 8 weeks, we had a pretty good system in place where we could then go into the more maintenance phase. Maintenance doesn't mean that we didn't change anything anymore, but we learned in smaller steps and longer iterations. That was the run mode. The trial team number 2 started in November. There we learned a lot from the boot camp, from the initial boot camp. The learnings were implemented so that we could do a 2-day workshop only with the trial team number 2 to onboard this. And we agreed with the asset lead, so the leader of the entire team working together, that the pilot should run until the end of March to then do an assessment, and that's what we're talking about today. BusinessMap was used as our software for the Kanban boards, and that's why we are here today with the BusinessMap team. So how did we go about in the bootcamp? We applied the static approach. We did a virtual boot camp as we had people from a lot of different locations. So we identified the service. For those who are not familiar with the static approach, first step is to identify what are our services, or the services from each team. What is the purpose of the service? What are the sources of dissatisfaction? Analyzed the demands and capacity, modeled the workflows that the different work items normally go through, identified the classes of service, and then designed the Kanban board. And that was all done in the first 4 weeks of the bootcamp, as you have seen in the principal sketch, so that the Kanban boards then went live after the 4 weeks. That was the setting, and Yvonne will introduce now the outcomes.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Yeah, so we ran the static workshop and did some breakout groups, and each team worked on their own workflows, because each team had different type of works they were working on. And you are seeing here some typical workflows that we built during the static workshop, but also refined afterwards. What is quite often used in drug development, we are creating documents that are needed for submission. So we have a workflow created for documents, so that you exactly can see via this workflow where is the status of work related to this document. And if you are familiar with a business map, you see gray is always the color for the column of the backlog. Clarify is the blue color for commitment point. And then we split it, the in progress part, to drafting, team review, stakeholder review, internal approval, finalization, and done. We have a second workflow as an example here that has a completely different type of work. It's the end-to-end evidence generation workflow, where we are talking really about the setup of trials or studies that need to bring the evidence if a compound is really effective. So we have here also backlog, as there's more work needed before a trial is started. The commitment point is split and requested, planning and review, before the actual work starts with trial planning, trial conduct, trial closeout, analysis, document reporting, and done. And this is what we are also refining in our improvement sessions with the team, if this is still the workflow that makes sense for them. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. For each team, we built also what Andrea mentioned, team Kanban boards. We choose management boards in Businessmap. And the advantage of management board is that you can build your own workflows on the board, but you can also link the initiative workflows of other boards. So you see here 3 examples, and you see the green colors. These are always the workflows of the related team, while the red workflows, these are the connections of workflows from other teams. Each team has an inbox. So if there's a request to a certain team with a certain work request, the other team can put a card into the inbox of the other team, and then the workflows build up where the team is working on. What you also see is that we have an improvement workflow that we build at most of the teams. And what you see in the red part is the linked workflows. So you see that from the trial team, for example, we have the inflammation 6 inbox. This is an inbox of another team. We have the linked workflow of the evidence team. This creates transparency, what in the other team is happening, and you can also link the related cards much more easier. So this helps us really to work more closely connected with each other and to have a lot of visibility. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. And here we have an example how we structured the work. So we have a board of a responsible team as an example. There we have a deliverable or an initiative, so a bigger work packages that is worked on over 3 months, for example. And it might be that people from this team are contributing to deliver this initiative, but that also other people from other teams are contributing. So we have the deliverable at the board of the responsible team, while the task cards or the child cards are distributed to the boards of the contributing teams. When you are looking into the business map card at the board of the responsible team, you can easily see which cards are linked. If you hover over them, you see the status where they are exactly sitting at the contributing team board, and also via the color coding in Businessmap, you can see already what is the status of a card. Is it still in the backlog? Is it committed? Is it in progress or already done? And this helps also to see the status of work. And at the beginning, we had a little bit of discussion, who's the responsible team? But this bugged then really out very much out over time. If you move on, Andrea, please. Of course, it's not only the board, but we adapted also our meeting structure. So it's all about the agile interactions where you need to talk about what you see on the board. We implemented that at least one team member of a contributing team is joining the meetings of the other or responsible team. And we aligned on a few meetings that each team implemented. We have the big room planning meetings. This is more a midterm, long-term planning for the next 3 months to align all the team members. What is the vision? What are the goals and the priorities we're working on for the next time? And there might be also team capacity discussed and clarification, and the backlog is updated. In the replenishment meetings, we are deciding what is worked on next. And there might be deliverables or tasks also added as needed. In Kanban meetings, we are checking and track the status of the flow of work and see if any help is needed, if there are any blockers, decide as a team what is required to resolve blockers and ask for clarification if needed. They are not implemented daily, but very often. And we implemented retrospective meetings to check, is it still okay how we are working, or do we need some adaptations, and encourage the team to decide on experiments and implemented improvement workflows. What we are also working on is now that teams are doing, for example, big room plannings together to get a common view, a better common view on this. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. And you see here an example how we also aligned our regular interactions. For example, we are doing every 2 weeks a replenishment meeting, and you see that we are starting with the asset team on Monday, followed by the evidence team on Tuesday. Wednesdays, we are trying to cover the trial teams, and Thursday, the BDS team, so that we are also following up on the topics from the other teams. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. And we are, of course, using heavily the board functions that are available in Businessmap. So we set up a card template that is available at each Kanban board of every team in the Kanban in this asset network. And we request that everybody adds, why are you requesting this? Or what is the purpose of this work? What is exactly, or what needs to be done? Any additional information that is needed. And what it also makes sense is a kind of planned start and end date, if available already, so that there's an idea how long does this work package lasts, and when is it planned, for example. And some teams are also working with the planning view. I mentioned it already, we implemented team boxes on each Kanban board so that also outside of regular meetings, every team can address a work request, whatever is needed, to another team. This card template will open, and then the colleagues are asked to add as much information as needed. The team that is receiving the request should clarify request. This is the next column on the board. And they are deciding, is it okay, ready to go? Is it committed, or maybe even wrong in this team? And the advantage is that we are addressing requests to a team and not to individuals, what happened very often in the past, so that single people were overloaded. And we are using the commons function. So each card has a common function in Businessmap. And so we are encouraging the network members who have access to all of the boards, of course, to use this common function so that everybody is also aware of the communication and can have a look in history. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. We are working on to communicate the priorities across the boards. Most teams have an expedite swim lane, so to see directly what is really urgent, what needs to be done urgently. Some teams are using also the built-in functionality, and what is planned is that we are really using the business rule that the importance of the parent card will be distributed to the linked child cards, so that there's an automated process to be aware of the importance of cards and the work. If you're moving on, Andrea, please. And our daily life is often that we are not working with one stakeholder. You see here one board of one of the teams, they are working with 8 stakeholders for 2 assets, for 2 different assets, that we are also using the card workflows or the board itself to discuss the priorities. It's meanwhile implemented for this network, but it also helps to discuss priorities and capacity with the other stakeholders. And the board creates really visibility where to work on next. And Andrea, if you move on, please. Yes.
Thank you. So now you have seen how we have set up the boards and how the teams are working in which environment. And of course, now it's interesting to see, does it help the teams to achieve what they wanted to achieve? If you remember the goals that the asset lead has formulated at the beginning. So we discussed, no, that was too quick. So we identified that the aim of our endeavor is to reduce waste and increase efficiency. The overall duration is not really the challenge that we have, but we have a lot of iterative cycles on changes, rework, and so on. And this is what we wanted to reduce. That's why we focused on a couple of metrics at the beginning. You see them here on the left-hand side. So reduction of the lead time until a deliverable is done, reduction of aging cards, as we do a lot of front loading typically, reduction of time from request to start working. We are visualizing hindrances. So we encounter that we will have a lot more blockers, just to identify what are the blockers and then to be able to work on them. And we will also try to capture the reduction of the waiting time, for example, for document review, and reduction of unplanned work items. But we don't have any measures on this yet. But we also have gathered some qualitative feedback from the participants, because the time is so short and the implementation was very complex, so that the metrics, we can only show very initial metrics. And here you see now from one of the teams how the metrics have developed from November onwards until end of April. And you see that the throughput has increased. That's what we also want, right? That we get more work done. And that the lead time was declining a little bit. And it looks maybe a little bit odd that the block time first diminishes a little bit and then increases. But that is really due to how the team dealt with blockers, because they decided that they want to identify the blockers more detail, and you see them on the right-hand side. In December, we only had 2 categories of blockers that we used: blockers internally and blockers outside the team. But then in April, we had far more variety and more detailed view and new detailed blockers that were used, so that we can better identify what are really the blockers, what really holds us back from getting the work done. As we didn't have that many measures, we asked the team members in surveys and worked with them, how was their felt result of the implementation of Kanban. And everything that is in green is positive, and the gray black ones are the negative feedback, where they didn't encounter any improvement and worsened. And the darker the green, the more the effect was of an enhancement. And you see that the majority, or everybody, felt that they had far more transparency over what they were doing, but also what the other teams were doing and where the work was coming from and how they could react to it. They were far more alerted to blockers, and they see now have a better insight and a better awareness of what blockers are, so that they can work on removing those blockers. Easier prioritization is not that it's not that easy to do. Take critical decisions ASAP. They feel that it's a little bit better than it was before, but the reduced time for updating, there you can see that sometimes some people even voted that it got worse, because now they have all these Kanban meetings, replenishment meetings, in addition to their meetings where they actually discuss the content. So we're not done yet, but we will keep on going, because the transparency really helped a lot the team members to get their work done. Oops.
Yeah, now a short summary and outlook, what is still ahead of us. So before we started to implement Kanban in the asset network. You see at the left side, we had the asset team as a really big team, value, truck, device, and evidence team loosely connected, and below evidence team, the other teams loosely connected. And this was how they are working in the past. They had a lot of individual priorities. They had own policies. They were addressing a lot of requests to single members of a team. They were sometimes not even aware who was in the team, what is the capacity of this person. And they were not really often aligned on common priorities. And this is really what changed over the last months. And you see at the right side, a much more closely connected team of teams. What we did also is that we implemented global policies, how the teams are working together in Businessmap. We have a certain dashboard where we agreed on certain policies that are developed during the future as well. We implemented flow managers. Each of the team has now a flow manager. That means the flow manager are supporting the flow of work inside the team, but also across the teams, and help also the team to identify blockers and to facilitate the meetings and help the team itself to improve. And the flow managers are also the connection points between the teams in addition, so they are focusing on the overall flow and important topics. At the beginning, it was a lot done by Agile Coaches, but then people joined the other meetings, and now we have also flow managers established. That will help in the future, and there are regular meetings of flow managers in the network. So we have really, meanwhile, a much more seamlessly interacting team of teams that are really working hand in hand, more trying to understand the common priorities, that they are aware of the capacity, and they are much more aligned. And also, you saw the metrics or the measurements from Andrea before. If you move on to the next slide, please. So, yeah, what is ahead of us? Originally, we started the bootcamp and building the boards based on the existing organization. So we had 7 teams, and each team built its own Kanban board and implemented everything for themselves. So it's based on the organizational structure. But this does not often follow the flow of work. The flow of work needs much more coordination across teams. And this is what we not really built up yet 100%. It sometimes blocks the flow somehow. Sometimes 2 teams have own deliverables, but at the end should be an end-to-end coordination. So our vision is that we are in the future are implementing a flight level 2 coordination level, probably with different boards, and see a little bit of an idea for vision below. The vision is that we are having a coordination level where we really need an end-to-end flow for certain deliverables, for trials. And it could look like that we have a flight level for asset documents and deliverables, evidence generation, and trial XYZ coordination. And we have the operational level. These are the team boards, the flight level 1, where we have the task cards of the different teams contributing to the deliverables that are stored at the coordination level, because the deliverable needs to be coordinated at a higher level so that everybody can contribute. This is a little bit of our vision, what to do in the future. There is still some work to do, but this is still ahead of us and a lot of work ahead of us. With that, we are at the end of our presentation, and I hand over to Mathias for a short recap and summary from his view as external consultant from Xuviate.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Yvonne. Let me just also get my presentation shared. There we go. It's starting to come up. Great. Thanks very much, Yvonne and Andrea. You've now heard the internal view, and we decided to add a very brief, about 5-minute overview from me as an external coach who helped to kickstart this transformation. And for this, I identified 8 critical success factors in this project that we regularly see and some specific lessons learned in this case. And I'm trying not to duplicate too much of what was already said. So the first critical success factor is starting with the end in mind. We need to start with a pain or a clear need. It cannot be nice to have, and we need to define some outcomes and not just activities and align everything to a true north, because without it, it changes, or any change loses momentum. And we should agree on some initial measures for the first quick wins up front. And in this example, we had a definite clear outcome in mind, as was shown, but initially no explicit measures in business terms covered. And in this case, we have to then depend on surveys, on feelings, and it's a more difficult sell to business. As it has been reported, this is changing, but this was definitely something we learned, which we should have done a lot more dedicated at the beginning to really get these wins. The second success factor is focus on a coordination need. You can start Kanban on team and even on personal level, and a lot of that was previously done on team level in Boehringer. But to add real business value, we should start on a level where we address a coordination need. As alluded to, we did start with a team of teams concept, but it did stay at the beginning of the team boundaries. This was how Boehringer was working and so on, and it was a bit too much, and it's better to think in end-to-end value streams. And as was already said here, the flight levels thinking model can definitely help. A next success factor is leadership buy-in and or participation. Ideally, you want to get buy-in as high as possible in the company, especially for coordination needs, as that goes across teams and across organization boundaries. Once more, it is easier to get that if we have clear measurable outcomes and a business case. And for this J-curve that we are showing here, things often first get worse before they get better, especially when starting up. And it is imperative to have a leadership who has the back of the team there. And in this case, the asset lead was fully bought in and even took part. And the Agile Coaches in turn had support from their leaders. That is really a best case scenario that we've had. There was unfortunately, it wasn't really needed in our small implementation, but over time it will be needed, support from higher up. And again, quick wins, more business case, business measures would help here. But this is also a lighthouse project, and we hope this will change over time. Factor 4 is taking your team along, involve them from the start, co-create with them, foster the ownership and have them have ownership as well. We did have representative of each team from the start in the bootcamp really involved, but we've felt that we should probably have put even more focus on helping them then onboard everybody sooner and not only shortly before go live or even trying to bring them in after go live later on. That is definitely something that was a learning point there. For team members, you can provide them really some basic theory. The focus should be on practical implementations. The theory is really to get shared language going, to get a bit of understanding going. And we usually also use simulation to introduce those flow concepts. That is a concept that works really well and that we as Xuviate use quite a lot and always for our boot camps. Imperative for cross-team coordination for global teams and also in hybrid teams like home office, and another focus to really collect metrics from day one. Even if we don't look them from day one, you need a good tool. Luckily, in this case, BusinessMap was already in place at Boehringer, but even so, we found that some people saw it just another tool. So it is imperative to see the methodology and be ready for this change management, to take people along and to have a good tool that you can bring. Once more, one aspect of onboarding teams. A key success factor is don't overthink it, go live. I am an industrial engineer by training. I come from the time of business process reengineering, where one would have a design team design that new perfect process in isolation for 6 months before implementing it, and then it falls flat. And we at Xuviate have since 2018 now run numerous boot camps and refined them And the concept works where we normally go live after a 4-week intro and design phase, and then really start iterating from there. One thing that we learned in this time is timing is key. Because it is such a tight schedule, especially for the first 4 weeks and the go live, there never is a perfect timer. That is absolutely. But even with great prep, poor timing can sink the launch. Avoid peak workload times. Respect the team's operational rhythm. In this case, in mid 2024 was quite a busy time in the life cycle of that development process. It was summer break for many, and then a key conference happened around the go live team. We went live, but it did break the momentum and added probably a month to our process. So that was definitely a learning as well. Another success factor is establishing continuous improvement and managing for flow. This is especially important as we go live so quick. We are not implementing a perfect system. We are just going with it. But it's generally a good practice to introduce continuous improvement. Introduce regular cadences, and they were already introduced as Kanban meetings, replenishment meetings, but have a clear process for continuous improvement, and then use flow metrics and use business measures to guide the conversations and improvements. It's important to see these changes as experiments, each with a hypothesis, try it out and then adjust, and even rollback is fine. It might look repetitive sometimes what you're doing, but it's like climbing a mountain. You come to the same side again with the same view, but you have a different vantage point. You're higher, you see more, you've learned more as you go along. And then the last one is there is consulting needed to start. That is a combination of consulting and coaching. You do need hands-on guidance from someone who has done it before and people who've got the time to focus on it. In this case, we had a combination of an external coach for the first phase of it, and then an awesome and very dedicated in-house team of Agile coaches. And this worked well and was key to the success. And if you don't have in-house coaches, you will need to have a bit more help. There are clear phases for this engagement. There is this intensive boot camp at the beginning. Then there's a phase of hypercare, or how it was called by Yvonne and Andrea was the run mode. But this is the first part of the run mode. And then you go into the real day-to-day, but you still need sparring partners then for the people, for the flow managers, for the people who the key people are. And then the last one is do it with you versus do it for you. You really want to work with the team to do that. But here, once more, very much important, with you still means for the coaches and consultants to get their hands dirty at the beginning. It's not only coaching. You really need to get involved. You really need to help, because otherwise it is not so quick to go live. These are some of the key patterns we've seen very, very quickly, but we've seen them repeatedly. Some of the lessons we were able to learn in this specific case, we can obviously go in the Q&A a bit more into that. But whilst every organization is different, the success factors I've shared here tend to show up again and again. And now it's time for the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Mathias, Yvonne, and Andrea, for sharing this powerful journey with us and the insights behind it. Yes, now it's time for Q&A. If you haven't already, please paste your questions inside the Q&A section. We do have 2 questions currently. So the first one was already answered in the chat by you, Mathias. What does metrics mean? However, if you want to add on that, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, I think I can quickly just say, I mean, the metrics are the measurements, are the graphs, are everything. It's just another word for all those measurements. So that's the easy one. In Kanban, it's called metrics. There's more behind it, but I don't think we need much more there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Then we can move to the next question, which is the following. As part of Flight Levels 2, do you visualize dependencies between teams and projects?
Yeah, and maybe I can take this. I think, Yvonne, you showed it that we have a view, and I can share the slide again just to show you what I mean. I hope the right slide is coming up. No, it's not. Let me just jump to it. So if you're familiar with Businessmap, we have the linkages, and here on the top graphic, you see that we have a deliverable that needs the collaboration of 4 different teams in order to be completed. And of course, we use the linkages so that the linked child cards, which are sitting on the other team boards, contributing team boards, are linked to the deliverable, so that the team that is responsible to deliver the deliverable can follow up without accessing the different boards and see the status of the to-dos of the related boards. And that was something that was highly appreciated by the teams, because normally they would need to reach out and ask, have you started already to review this document, or when can I expect la la la. So that was a high perceived value that we created or brought to the teams, that they were linking. And also Yvonne mentioned it earlier, who's actually responsible for the different deliverables. Although we have really very detailed SOPs and how-to guidelines and so on, a lot of the times it was unclear to the team members, and sometimes we needed like 2 weeks to find out who's really the owner of this deliverable, not they knew who was contributing, but who is really owning the deliverable, in order to have it on their board and then follow up that it's really delivered in the required time. But of course, we're using the linkage, and it's even made easier because we can show the workflows of the other teams also on the respective team board, so that they don't only see their little task, but they see also the overall picture, and they can see how the other team members are contributing, or the other teams are contributing to get the work done.
Andrea, if I may add one more thing there. Obviously, at the moment, this is the board of the responsible team. Over time, with the new vision, is that flight level 2 will not be the board of the responsible team, but it will be actually that workflow. But the structure will be the same. And the other thing is, with the doing column, it's not a doing column. This is the doing section that might have 10 columns. So it might be somewhere there. This is just a depiction. So those are the 2 additions there.
Yeah, just a schematic graph. Yeah. And I have to say that, for a trial, that a lot of different functions are coming together. So that's somehow a flight level 2 board, although we don't have the flight level 1 boards underneath. So it's a mixture right now, and we're finding out or trying to elaborate what's really the right way to capture the work and make it easy for the people also to follow up.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea and Matthias. Another question is coming from Goran. One slide said that requests are put into the inbox of the team to address them to the team, not to individuals. How has moving from individual ownership to team responsibility impacted flow through on requests?
Yeah, this was a quite interesting development, because in the past, the teams were really used to, I send an email to somebody I know, and this person should work on. What they did not think about that also, is it the right person? Is it the right team? And that also different people from different teams are addressing to the same person, different requests maybe at the same time. So it was really a big change that we are managing now the requests from a team perspective, and also make it visible. Via the board, what just Andrea mentioned, it created a lot of transparency, who's working on what, to manage the visibility, but also be aware who has maybe too many requests, or can somebody support the other person who's maybe the owner of a task but needs simply help. This is what we are covering then through the different meetings. But this was a really big change for the teams. They were not used to work as a team. They were more individual contributors or trying to find the right person who is the right contributor to a task. And this has now really changed through this board setup. And also discussing, do I understand the task that is assigned to me or to my team?
Great. Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, we are going to move to the next one, which is from Elizabeth. She's asking, was there any follow-up with those who thought that updating trackers had become more complicated? Was it more time-consuming or confusing, or both?
What do you mean with trackers? I don't understand.
I guess they mean by cards and so on. It's though in your review, I would expect the ones that have said it's now more complicated. There was the one black area that was in there.
I mean, as Matthias said also in his slides, the things are getting worse before they are getting better. Teams really had to learn a lot, and they don't like, especially under pressure, they don't like to change their way of working. So that is something, and some people are like to adapt or try something new easily. They really have fun with this, and others are more reluctant to change. And I think that this is, keeping track of the tickets, of the to-do cards, moving them on the board. It feels to some of them like a burden, but they see at the same time that they really like it when the others have updated their tickets, and they have a lot more transparency across everything that is done. But I think that's a matter of time until they understand, and if they all contribute to it, then it really will work. Because right now, if only a large fraction, not everybody, but a lot of people are doing this, I think it will help the system overall.
And I think also as you iteratively improve, it's also obviously you're taking those feedbacks into account and saying,
Absolutely.
Okay, this is still very complex. Let's make it easier. Things like that.
And they have to learn, what is really a deliverable or initiative in business terms, and what is the to-do card? How many to-do cards do I need to create in order to get a deliverable done? What's the size? Do I have it for every letter and every review cycle, or do I do 3 review cycles together and make them just a subtask? So they really have to, and the teams are handling these topics in a very different manner. So some have more subtasks, some have more child cards. And that's something that every team has to identify, what is really their way of working. You cannot do a one size fits all. You can present, okay, this team has done it this way, this team is doing this way, but find your own way so that it works for them, and that the effort that they have to put in and what they get out of it has a good balance for them.
Thank you very much. Okay, we have another question, which goes, I understood you have around 6+ months of experience now with the Kanban systems being operated and adapted. What was the most valuable or surprising feedback you received from customers or management? Example, external references in regards to your service delivery.
I think the network, what they are delivering, they are much more aligned on the priorities, what they need to deliver. They have a very much closer communication, and they are also aware of what are the blockers they have in front of them. So at the end, what we are seeing and what was shown with the metrics, that we see a tendency that they are start to deliver a bit faster, or that they have a higher throughput. Is it recognized by everybody yet? Probably not. We are still there in a learning phase. But we are also hearing very good feedback from the team members on operations leads. For example, Andrea and I were onboarding a second trial team after the bootcamp took place. And then the operations lead, or the colleagues who were onboarded, they were quite skeptical. They were told to join this network more or less. And we started to onboard them, and then the operational lead stand up and told them, I was on vacation 2 weeks. I came back and the email box was full of emails. But then afterwards, directly, we had our planning meeting, the big room planning. We had the planning meeting and the Kanban meeting, and I directly knew what is in front of me. I didn't need to read all my emails. I could delete everything from my inbox. I was up to date within half a day with all the meetings that we had. And I think this impressed the others. I'm still a bit skeptical because you cannot feel if you're not experienced it. And after now several months after their onboarding, also the trial leads are very much convinced that this is a very good way forward. There's a lot of transparency, identifying blockers earlier, and at the end, hopefully to deliver also a bit faster and identify the waste early.
Maybe to add to this, there were 2 more examples that were really surprising to me. So one of the evidence team members, she was engaged into another therapeutical area, but with the same compound. And she said, I cannot set this up without a Kanban board. I can't do it. And that was just after the bootcamp closed. And the other example that we have is one of the flow managers, and she's working on 2 different assets. So this asset working in the Kanban approach, and the other asset doing the classical project management with, MS Project or something like this. And she said, I wish so much that we can also use Kanban and that it's rolled out through the entire company. I don't want to work with this project management view anymore because, there are so many changes. And she was the organizational lead that Yvonne was talking about and the woman that I was talking about last, both of them were very critical at the beginning. They said, this is so much additional work. I don't want to do it. But they see so much benefit in this. It makes their life so much easier that they don't want to miss it anymore.
Thank you very much.
That everybody would say this, but we're working on it.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for these examples. I think everyone can relate with that at their journey. Okay, we have one more question, and I think we'll be right at the hour. So it goes, how did the pull principle work for the teams? Example, deciding who would be best to take on new work requests.
This is done mainly via our replenishment meetings, to look at the backlog, what is the work that should be pulled next, or looking into the commitment point. But we also need to mention here a little bit that in clinical development, sometimes there are restrictions who can do a certain type of work. But basically, we are looking into in our Kanban meetings who can pull the work. And who's the best person with capacity, who has the right skills to work on this request when it is required.
Okay, thank you very much, Yvonne. That was the last question from the Q&A. I'll just give the chance if anyone else has a question to submit it now.
I think other than that, we are also nearly on the half hour. So this is actually timing. Timing is perfect. We've got 1 minute to spare probably to close off, and then everybody can go home at the right time. So I just want to say thanks again to everybody who listened, and a special thanks to Andrea and Yvonne, and also to your colleagues who took part in this experiment, and that you did bear with me and sometimes we are going to do this now, especially at the beginning. As you said, it was also for you sometimes a bit scary. But I think that is where we learned, and this is where we are. And going live after 4 weeks, I think everybody thought I was mad when I first said that to you. We are going live after 4 weeks, but we did, and we actually got there. So thanks very much from my side there. And also just a quick one to slot in a quick bit of advertising. If anybody enjoyed this, we're having our next webinar on the 12th of June, and we'll send out the invite with your emails in the end as well. But this is more in the industrial side from BASF Tamal, also a case study, that time in German, wie eine Abteilung durch Transparenz und Fokus ihre Arbeitsweise revolutioniert. So it's in BASF Tamal, how an organization revolutionized its way of working through transparency and focus. Very much in the same direction, but in an industrial organization.
Thank you, Matthias. And yes, this brings us to the end of the session. On behalf of all of us, thank you everyone for your time, for joining us, for your attention, and for your questions. We hope the conversation and the details shared by Yvonne, Andrea, and Matthias spark ideas, reflections that you can take back to your team, your own organization. Again, to mention that the recording and the presentation slides will be sent shortly after this session. And if you have any follow-up comments, questions, or would like to continue the discussion, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you again, and see you next time.